You've watched someone mock you, humiliate you, and walk away untouched, and you told yourself that's just how life works. This story is about the day life disagreed. Let me start from the end so you understand how serious this story is. By the time the sun set on that same day, that ordinary Tuesday, one girl would be sleeping on a mat woven from shame, and another would be staring at a ceiling she no longer recognized. Same village, same sky, completely different lives. Fate, my people, does not send a warning. She was already dead before anybody buried her. That is the only way I can describe what Zarachi looked like the morning everything changed. Standing by the river, bare feet on red earth, a torn wrapper around her waist, eyes that carried something too heavy for a 14-year-old girl, and a clay pot cracked down the middle, held together with nothing but prayer and stubbornness. That was Zarachi, the orphan, the girl everybody in Uguta village had quietly agreed to forget. But then there was Folake. And if Zarachi was the dry season, then Folake was the harmattan that came to make sure you felt it. But before we talk about Folake, we have to talk about the woman who built her. Her name was Lolo Obiageli, and she was the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately started ranking everyone in it. She was not a bad woman. That is the complicated part. She loved her daughter fiercely, completely, in the suffocating way that some mothers love, where love and control wear the same wrapper and you cannot tell them apart. She had grown up with nothing, scratched her way up from a one-room house in a dusty compound to the biggest building on the hill. And somewhere in that climb, she had decided quietly, firmly, the way people decide things they will never say out loud, that poverty was a disease, and that the only way to make sure it never touched her daughter was to teach Folake to treat it like one. Every morning, before Folake left the house, Lolo Obiageli would fasten her daughter's gold chains herself, one by one, and every morning she would say the same things, not shouting, soft, the way you plant a seed, gently, so it takes root without resistance. You are Chief Okonkwo's daughter. You carry our name on your body. Do not let any person bring that name down. Do not mix with people who will drag you to where we came from. You hear me? Poverty is contagious, my daughter. Stay away from it. Folake would nod. She always nodded. She was 14. What else do you do at 14 when the person you love most in the world hands you a belief like it is a gift? You carry it. You carry it to the well, you carry it to the market, you carry it to the face of a girl with a cracked pot and bare feet, and you throw it at her like a stone, because that is what you are taught, that cruelty dressed in confidence is called dignity. Lolo Obiageli never went to the well herself. She sent Folake. She sat at home with her own chains and her own ceiling and her own version of a cracked pot, one she had never told anyone about, not even Chief Okonkwo, not even God. The cracks in hers were just harder to see. Folake arrived at the well like a peacock enters a room, like the room should be grateful. She had gold anklets that caught the morning sun before the rest of her even appeared on the path. Her wrapper was the deep green of envy itself, trimmed with gold thread her father had imported from Aba market. Around her neck, 3 gold chains, not 1, 3, because 1 was for her beauty, 2 was for her father's money, and 3 was to make sure you counted. She called loud enough for the whole riverbank to hear. Is that Zarachi? The beggar girl is here early today, oh. Her 2 friends, Ngozi and Amaka, laughed on cue. They always did. That is what happens when you follow wealth. You learn to laugh before you even hear the joke. Zarachi said nothing. She kept pulling her rope, hand over hand, slow and steady. The cracked pot was almost full. She just needed to hold on. She just needed not to cry. Not today. Your pot is cracked, Folake said, stepping closer, tilting her head. Like your life. Her friends laughed again. Zarachi looked up then, just once. Her eyes met Folake's and something passed between them. Not anger, not sadness, something quieter, something that looked almost like pity. But Folake did not see it. people who are too busy performing rarely see anything real. My mother said I should not talk to you, Folake continued, reaching for the well rope with her soft, unworked hands. My mother said poverty is contagious. She laughed. Her friends laughed. Even the birds seemed to leave. Zarachi picked up her cracked pot, water already leaking down her arms, and walked away. She did not run. She walked, with the quiet dignity of someone who has been hurt so many times they have learned to wear pain like a second skin. She walked until she reached the old part of the river, the path the villagers didn't go to anymore, the part where the water was still. She sat down at the river's edge and she cried. Not the polite kind of crying, not the kind you do when someone is watching and you want to look dignified. No, this was the other kind, the kind that comes from the stomach, the kind that sounds like something breaking. Why? She asked the water. I did not ask to be born without parents. I did not ask to be poor. Why must I be punished for what I did not choose? The river did not answer. And then it did. The water changed color. First green, then gold, then something that had no name. A voice, not loud, not soft, but everywhere at once, said, Noami, my child, I have been watching. Zarachi did not run. Maybe she was too tired to run. Maybe after enough suffering you stop being afraid of strange things, because nothing can be stranger than the life you are already living. What do you want? She whispered. The question the river said is, what do you want? Zarachi wiped her face. She thought for a long time, and then she said something that surprised even the river. I do not want Folake to suffer. I just want to understand what it feels like to be seen. The water rippled. Granted, it said, but understand, what you ask will cost both of you. You will gain what she has, she will gain what you have, and neither of you will be complete until you find each other again. Zarachi opened her mouth, but the river had already gone still. Folake woke up first. She reached for the silk pillow she slept on every night and her hand touched thatch. She sat up, and the ceiling she stared at was the cracked, smoke-stained ceiling of a one-room mud house. On a mat, one thin wrapper, a cracked clay pot in the corner. She screamed. Nobody came, because there was nobody to come. On the other side of the village, Zarachi woke up and did not scream. She lay still for a long moment, feeling the softness beneath her. Then she looked at her hands, smooth now, soft, adorned with a thin gold ring. She sat up slowly and looked around at a room full of things she had only ever pressed her face against glass to see. She did not celebrate. She sat very still and she said, "Thank you," quietly, to nobody in particular, or maybe to the river, or maybe to God. It's hard to say where gratitude is supposed to go when it is this big. Folake, meanwhile, was falling apart. She went to the market because surely this was a dream and the market would wake her up. But the market did not wake her up. The traders who had once greeted her with both hands now ignored her. Children pointed. A woman told her to move out of the way. She had never been told to move out of the way in her life. She reached for her neck, no chains, her ankles, no anklets, her pride also somehow missing. She sat on the ground in the middle of the market, and for the first time in her comfortable, padded, gold-trimmed life, Folake wept. People walked past. Nobody stopped. She understood then something she could never have been told. It took Folake 3 days to learn how to fetch water without spilling it. 6 days to learn how to cook on a firewood stove without burning her eyebrows off. 9 days before she stopped crying every morning when she woke up. But here's the thing nobody tells you about suffering. It teaches. Not gently, not kindly, but it teaches. She learned the names of the other women at the well because now she had time to listen. She learned that Mama Eze had been sick for a month and nobody had brought her food. She learned that the little boy who always sat outside the school fence could not afford the school fees. She learned 1,000 things that her gold anklets had been making too much noise for her to hear. She thought of Folake every single day. She thought of Folake, and somewhere under that, buried, tender, too new to fully touch, she thought of her mother. For the first time in her comfortable, padded, gold-trimmed life, Folake did not think of Lolo Biageli as the woman with the answers. She thought of her as a woman who was afraid of going back, afraid that poverty, like a shadow, would find its way back to her door if she ever let her guard down. Folake sat with that for a long time. The well water was cold, her hands were raw, and the understanding that settled into her chest was heavier than any clay pot she had ever carried. Her mother did not make her cruel out of nothing. She made her cruel out of love. That's the most dangerous kind. Zarachi, on the other side of this story, was also learning. She learned that wealth is louder than you think, that people treat you differently not because you changed, but because your wrapper changed. She learned that a warm bed does not automatically produce peace, that loneliness can live in a big house just as comfortably as it lives in a one-room mud house. She learned that Folake's father, Chief Okopo, was a deeply unhappy man who bought his daughter things because he did not know how to say, "I love you," out loud. She learned that the girl who had tormented her was also, in her own way, suffering. She thought of Folake. Every single day, she thought of Folake. On the 14th day, they both went back to the river. Maybe the river called them. Maybe guilt and gratitude, when they are strong enough, point you in the same direction. They saw each other at the same moment. For a long time, silence. Folake looked at Zarachi. Zarachi looked at Folake. And everything that needed to be said without words was said. Then Folake opened her mouth, and what came out was not what she planned. "I'm sorry," she said. Just that. No explanation, no justification, no, but you have to understand my side. Just the two words, naked and undecorated. Like she had learned, finally, to say something without performing it. Zarachi walked toward her, and they sat together at the river's edge. The girl who used to have everything, and the girl who used to have nothing. And they talked until the sun went all the way down. The river rippled once. Then it returned to gold. Then to green. Then to water. Just water. Nobody in the village understood what happened the next morning. Folake woke up in her father's house again. Zarachi woke up in the mud hut, back where she started. Everything returned, just like the river said it would. But here is what did not return to its original position. Something in both of them had moved, permanently. Folake became the kind of woman who greeted the water sellers by name, who sent food to Mama Eze, who sat with orphan children and told them, in a voice that knew what it was saying, "You are not less than anybody. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise." And Zarachi stopped walking with her head down. Folake's father, because some fathers can be taught, even old ones, eventually took Zarachi in as a ward. She went to school. She finished first in her class. 3 years later, she was the first girl from Uguta village to win a state scholarship. She dedicated it, quietly, to a river. As for Lolo Biagili, she never fully understood what had happened to her daughter in those 14 days, but she noticed the change. How Folake started greeting the gate man by name, how she stopped clutching her chains when poor people walked past, how she brought Zarachi home one afternoon, sat her at the dining table, and served her food with her own hands. Lolo watched from the doorway. She did not say anything. But later that night, alone in her room, she opened the box she kept under the bed, the one nobody knew about. Inside it was a photograph, faded, crinkled at the edges, of a young girl in a torn dress standing in front of a one-room mud house. The girl in the photograph was smiling. The girl in the photograph was her. She sat with it for a long time. Then she closed the box, turned off the light, and cried the kind of quiet cry that comes when you realize, too late and too slowly, that the thing you spent your whole life running from was never actually behind you. They grew up together after that. Different backgrounds, different wounds, same scar. That invisible mark that stays when two people have seen each other truly. At Folake's wedding, many years later, Zarachi was the chief bridesmaid. And when Zarachi's daughter was born, she named her Amara, Grace, because that is what it was. Some people will tell you that stories like this don't happen, that rivers don't speak, that fate doesn't swap lives overnight. Maybe they are right. But I want you to look, really look at the girl you walk past at the market, the one carrying the cracked pot, the one whose eyes are too heavy for her age. Look at her. Not because fate will punish you if you don't, but because she's there, and she deserves to be seen.